So you want to create that 80s or 90s look, so you need a vintage camcorder, right? But which one do you get? If you go on eBay and type in vintage camcorder, you're going to see so many come up. How are you going to know what to buy? There's so many different models and types and prices to choose from. The whole process can be rather dizzying. Well, what does Google have to say about this? When you type it in, you get 6 of the best camcorders for vintage footage, and the first one that comes up is something called the Panasonic PV-L559. Good quality footage, long battery life, the article says, great zoom. This one looks like it has potential, and it's on Amazon. Whoa, are you kidding me? Yes, you can actually see it. It's discontinued, but you can still buy it. Let's check out another article. This one says the first one is a high 8 model. The second one, well, here we see another very similar model to that other Panasonic, the PV-L550. So it looks like this PV-L550 series is the way to go. I searched for a PV-L559. I found one on eBay. Looked like it was a good seller. I even liked the bag it comes with. I was very excited when it arrived to get my great vintage camcorder, except the bag didn't exactly match this nice leather bag in the picture. This is like a plastic black bag. And the camera also didn't look right. Where were the stickers that were in the picture? And I figured out what I did wrong. Shame on me. I didn't follow my own advice for buying a vintage camcorder. Look, 1 available, 6 sold, which means that's just a picture of one of the cameras he sold. All the other ones that he has look different. I'd like to know exactly what I'm getting. I actually made a video just on this topic of the pitfalls of buying vintage camcorders online and how careful you have to be. I guess I probably have to watch my own video again. I let the seller know I was kind of unhappy with what happened, but the camcorder fortunately still looked clean. It was in good condition. It has that fold-out LCD screen, and that VHS-C is the type of tape that it takes. So I broke out a brand new VHS compact tape. Now realize you can't just put that in your VCR like that. You need a special adapter, which is called a VHS-C adapter, and you manually just slacken the tape a little bit. You put it in the adapter and you put that into your VCR to play the tapes. VHS-C was among the very first camcorders that were introduced, but those had black and white viewfinders. This sports a nice color viewfinder, and that entire viewfinder rotates up, revealing the VCR controls right underneath, so you can watch your tape back right from the camera. There are some very basic settings that can be changed from the menu. You can also add titles, some silly, some hokey, but what do you expect from the 90s? Like, give me a break, and good luck, and I love you, and oops, and our little angel. Yes, our little angel. Or not. The VHS-C tapes are still widely available online in either 30-minute or 20-minute lengths. That's if you're recording in the standard speed. In the SLP speed, you can get more, but with reduced quality, so I don't recommend that. The zoom rocker switch is nice and big and recessed for your fingers. And in the display, it tells you how far you're zooming in, which is convenient, like 2 times, 3 times. The EIS stands for electronic image stabilization. Well, how well does that work?
This is at 23 times. This is at 17 times.
Are we dizzy yet? Yeah, I had to see if the EIS was on because this didn't seem right, but this is how it is actually. I tried to see if I could stabilize it further in post-production. Final Cut Pro has a stabilization tool, but since the image is standard def in 4:3, it does something funny to the black bars and it doesn't look right. Okay, here we have like a pinkish, purplish colored flower. Let's see if the camera does a better job with colors than it does with stabilization. And here are the flowers. A little more on the purple side, sort of lost the pinkish color a little bit. The camera has a very close minimum focusing distance. You could even call it macro. You can get in real tight on these flowers. And that's one of the things I really like about these old camcorders with the small sensors. You can really get in very close. Imagine getting this close in someone's face.
Get that camera out of my face.
Stick around. Coming right up, we're going to be testing this camera with a live model. And I found that live models are so much better than dead models. If you're getting some nostalgia from all this, if you're learning something, please do subscribe and hit that like button. And tech to remember, old technology meets new technology. And we got a lot more videos to come on vintage gear. If you decide to get this camera, you'll have to buy an external battery from a place like Battery Mart, which still makes old camcorder batteries, and a nice thick battery will give you a lot of juice. To run the camera, you just turn it into camera mode. You can also turn it into VCR mode as well. But as soon as you put the camera into the camera mode, the lens cap automatically opens, which is a nice touch. So you notice that big light there. Do we need that big light? How well does the camera do in low light? I always test that on all my cameras, so let's go ahead and do a low light test. So we are now looking at the low light capabilities of this top vintage camcorder from the 90s. Let's take a look and see how it does. And let's compare it to a top of the line current camcorder. And this is the Sony Alpha 1. Decades later, how does the low light performance compare? How does the autofocus compare? And let's try the built-in light and see how well that does. And this is the same scene with the built-in camera light. I will tell you that if you do wind up using this at like a dinner party, you're not going to be popular. The light is like completely blinding. Maybe you need to put like a piece of diffuser in front of it or something. There's no variable control either, it's just one output.
The blindness was temporary, Jim.
Even in low light, the autofocus was good, and no, that's not going to change the focus. There is a button that you got to press awkwardly up and down if you want to use manual focus. And if you want to use the camera as a player, there's an AV output so you can connect to your TV. Okay, time to go out into the real world with this camera and hit the streets of Brooklyn, New York, and meet up with our beautiful model, Alexandra.
Hey, I got a confession. Been losing all momentum. Just because it's easy, but that don't make it better. I wanna dig my hands deep down in the dirt. Take a walk along the street if I'm feeling dessert. All of this convenience just doesn't work for me. I wanna play with fire, let me get hurt. Can we take it back to 95? Before we had this drama in our lives, just staring at the screen every day and night. I miss the rush of living in real life. Go get your DeLorean. Oh, I miss the summers with you and never swipe left to right. Just don't bother. I know this all just makes me sound ancient, but sons and daughters, that shit was amazing. Can we take it back to 95? Before we had this drama in our lives, just staring at the screen every day and night. I miss the rush of living in real life. Go get your DeLorean.
Let's quickly compare this to 4K.
Yo, what you got in that bag? Candy cigarettes and a Playboy mag. Many used to have to work for that.
So remember the eBay guy that I bought the, quote, 559 from, or was supposed to? Well, something told me to check my model number at the bottom of the camera, and it's, look at this, it's a 551. I wanted to get the 559, so he couldn't even get that right. Now, I did also buy the 550, which is very similar to the 559, but I still want the 559. I mean, that one article said it's the best, so I actually went on eBay and bought an actual 559. And it's really the 559. This one really looks identical to the other two, except this is a 26 times zoom, so it turns out that this camcorder has a black and white viewfinder. The 550 also has a black and white viewfinder, but this LCD screen looked dimmer than the other ones. I don't know why, it just sort of looked washed out. So yeah, now I have all three. It's getting confusing, I know.
It's an obsessive compulsive thing.
So I lined them all up, but I wanted to do a test to see if the stabilization is better than one over the other. Have there been any improvements with each model? First is the 550.
And we're going to see how steady we can hold it. 18 times zoom. Trying to hold it as steady as possible with the 550.
This is the 551.
This is 23 times with the EIS on. 23 times.
Now this is the 559.
26 times. Still doesn't look too good. It looks very shaky.
But when you compare all three, it really looks like that 551. Even though it's not perfect, that EIS seems to be doing the best job. It also seems to have the brightest and most accurate color, closest to the actual color of the flowers, more yellow. And it's the only one with a color viewfinder. So the two articles, one that mentioned the 550 and the other article that mentioned the 559, well, so it turns out the 551 is the way to go. I happen to really like the color viewfinder. I think the stabilization is a little bit better. It's weird how they name these things. It looks like the 551 must have come out after the 559 because it has the color viewfinder. It's strange. I didn't even order the 551. I got this one by accident, thinking I was going to get the 559. He was just a lousy seller. But I guess in the end it worked out well. This way I could get to test all three.
Oh boy, that's a lot of work here. This was a lot of work to cut through here.
Now that's not me narrating. That must be the original owner of this camcorder. The tape came when it was shipped on eBay. So this is him documenting a huge blizzard that hit the area in 2010. Poor guy. But at least you're getting to see original camcorder footage when it was being used. So are these Panasonic VHS-Cs the best vintage camcorder you should get, like the article stated? Well, I'm not so sure if it's the best. It's very hard to say if one camera is the best. But I would definitely say if you're looking to get a model like this, it's a very good choice for a few reasons. So all these cameras worked right out of the box, and that's pretty rare for a vintage camcorder that it's actually going to work. So they must have been well made, and it looks like they were manufactured after the whole leaky cap issue, so the internal components have still held up over the last few decades. So the camcorder itself has that vintage chunky look, but with a couple of modern touches like the color viewfinder and the LCD screen. But what reminds you of how vintage it is the actual LCD panel is pretty small in comparison to the actual whole door. More modern cameras have a bigger, brighter LCD panel. So you definitely will feel using this as a vintage camera. It definitely gives you that vintage look as well. And maybe the lack of good stabilization adds to that shaky 90s effect. It's also a VHS compact camcorder, which was the very first camcorder that was introduced in 1984, was a VHS-C model made by JVC, made famous in the Back to the Future movies. Some would argue this is not the first camcorder, that Sony introduced the Beta movie cameras a little before that, but those camcorders, in quotes, didn't play back tapes. These camcorders, the JVC GRC1, was the first camera actually able to play back the tape from the camera itself. So we call that an official camcorder. The best vintage camcorder? Definitely a good vintage camcorder. There are a lot of choices, a lot of different formats out there. If you subscribe, you'll already see some reviews I've made of various different camcorders, and I've got more coming along the way. So stay tuned, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.